Well, with their thoughts on the Prime Minister's video and the Conservative leader's response, we're now joined by Liberal strategist Stevie O'Brien, principal and founding partner at Barrack Hill Public Affairs, and Conservative strategist Jordan Paquet, vice president at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Hello to both of you.
Hello.
So listen, let's break this up and begin with the Prime Minister's video, because that was the first one out. And I have to say, when I saw it, I found myself, debating in my head, why is he doing this right now? Is this essentially an admission that trade talks are going horribly with the United States? Why do you think he's posting this video, Stevie?
I think there's a few reasons. One, there isn't a natural avenue for the Prime Minister to speak to the Canadian public. The speech from the throne is delivered by the Governor General. The upcoming spring economic statement will be delivered by the Finance Minister. And scrums and question period isn't really a way to deliver or speak to the Canadian public. And I think what we've seen, and he's even been criticized for not speaking enough about what's going on, not explaining enough. What I saw there was a man who used to be a governor of the Bank of Canada, used to coming out with economic updates, somebody who's a business leader, and that it kind of gave me the vibe of a CEO speaking to the company when tough times are coming.
Tough times are coming. I'll leave it at that thought. But Jordan, I'll bring you in. Why do you think he's doing this right now?
Sure, and I'm going to respectfully disagree. I think one of the best spots to go and speak directly to Canadians is inside of Parliament. I mean, the Prime Minister can go in and deliver an update at any point that he wants into it and allow the oppositions to respond, but he seems to like being out elsewhere, and that's totally fine. The Prime Minister has any opportunity to address Canadians, and this is what he chose to. I do think it certainly raises some questions about how the negotiations are going. He gave this speech in Davos a couple months ago. He gave very similar messages in the campaign last year about he was going to be the one to get this done. But here we are over a year into his mandate, and there's still no movement on it. In fact, it seems like, from at least the U.S.'s standpoint, that things aren't going great in the negotiations. So the U.S., despite absolutely all the troubles with the Trump administration and how completely unfair that they've been to us over these negotiations, it's still up to the Prime Minister to get down there and get a deal, and that's what he promised to do in the election.
Which essentially is the message that we've now heard from the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, responding late this afternoon to the video that was put out by the Liberals Sunday morning. What do you make of that argument? Because essentially what he says, in broad stroke, is that the speech is nothing new, and it's basically meant to hide the lack of accomplishment of this first year.
I wouldn't say that there's been a lack of accomplishment. From my perspective, Carney has done a lot to set up Canada for success, has made major announcements vis-a-vis additional spending. So you can't sort of criticize him that he hasn't done anything, as the leader of the opposition did, and then also criticize him for all the money that he's spending doing projects that you are also objecting to. So it's a bit of it's politics.
Because both messages were in that speech.
Both messages were in that speech. But I think Carney's, he's got a plan, and he's going to speak to the public on the CUSMA thing, on USMCA. I think he's setting people up because a deal is not possible. Or a deal is going to be, how do you make a deal with Donald Trump and then believe that he's going to uphold that end of the deal? Even if we went down and negotiated the best deal ever, the next day we could find out on Twitter or X that it's been torn up. And so I think Carney's doing the right thing, saying we're doubling down on diversifying our trade, finding new partners, but he's being honest with the public that it's going to be a bit of a rocky go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll pick up on that point, though, and Jordan, I'll get you in, because what we heard from Pierre Poilievre, not really all that different than the speech he gave last week at the Canadian Club in Toronto. And he talks about policies that the Conservatives have been essentially raising the last month. Things like getting the traditional auto pact up and running again to preserve the auto industry in this country, securing a tariff-free free trade deal with the United States, except that when I've spoken to U.S. officials, they are very clear. Any deal, as far as they are concerned with the Trump White House, will include a tariff. And I was in the Oval Office when Donald Trump said it. He does not care to have Canadian-made cars as part of these deals. He says the United States has their own cars. So is there an argument to be made that the Prime Minister is being more direct with Canadians about the challenges ahead of them, rather than trying to sell off a possibility that the Americans say that they're not open to?
No, I mean, look, you raised some interesting points, but at the end of the day, it's up to the Prime Minister to negotiate this deal. Canada has some leverage in this. Of course, the U.S. is the economic superpower of the world. So yeah, they have a lot more. We have a lot more to lose than they do in this, but we still have certain things that we can offer up. I mean, we have our natural resources. We could make North American energy superpower, as I think all parties have talked about doing. So we have avenues that we can help to leverage, and this is all part of the negotiation on this. And Donald Trump's not going to be president forever. He may even have his wings clipped in the midterm elections and lose some of his power. So who knows when it comes to that side. But I will say it seems to be that it's been Pierre Poilievre doing some of the heavy lifting here, going down and going on shows and meeting with the governors that the president is close to, and shows that the president listens to. And I think it would be interesting for the Prime Minister to actually go down and take up some of this mantle himself and start doing it. Great that some of the ministers are going down, but I think Trump would probably like to see a one-on-one negotiation here as well at some point.
Stevie?
When you say heavy lifting, you meant kettlebells, right?
Sure, absolutely, fair enough.
But no, I mean, I think Carney's got a very difficult line to walk. He never mentioned Trump by name in his statement. He didn't in the Davos speech as well. He needs to demonstrate strength without sort of poking the bear or antagonizing and making the situation worse. I think when the Canadian Prime Minister goes down to Washington in this particularly tense time, it will have to be for very deliberate reasons with defined outcomes. It's easier when you're opposition to go around and do podcasts and do things like that. I think it would be much more difficult for the Prime Minister to take on that risk. I'm interested to see how the negotiations go. We're started in many industries and many Canadians are nervous about them. Personally, I don't think that there's much. I don't see how you negotiate with the U.S. when they are not holding up their word. They're not showing themselves to be a trustworthy partner. How do you make a deal with somebody who you no longer trust?
Listen, I'm going to pick up on a point that Stevie made about tough times ahead, and the Prime Minister says he will be giving more updates in future. We don't know the frequency of that. We don't know the when of that. However, it does raise the possibility that the Canadian economy and therefore the Canadian people will be facing some tough times ahead. What do you read into that, Jordan?
Yeah, and I hope not, but it's very clear that the headwinds are coming in many different areas. You have either national unity issues as well. You have the situation in Iran right now that seems to get more out of control and chaotic. We have no idea what's going to happen there. So we have no idea what's going to happen with global oil prices. All we can do is look at what we can affect here at home. And unfortunately, after the last 10 years of the Liberal government and Justin Trudeau, we haven't been in a state where we can get some of our resources to market and actually can control our own or produce it more domestically for domestic consumption. So I think there's a lot of things that the government can do and do it quite quickly to break down some of those barriers inside of Canada that we can use to help strengthen our economy here. I agree, we can't just be reliant on one person for the rest of history and have all our eggs in one basket. That's why the Harper government went out and signed so many trade deals with countries around the world. But that's just something that the government's going to have to get to doing quite quickly instead of just talking about it.
Stevie, what do you say about the tough headwinds ahead?
Well, I think that there are tough headwinds ahead. I think that Carney's probably quite happy that he has a majority government now, so that it could create some stability as he tries to steer this ship and roll out his vision. I think his vision includes what was just mentioned, which big projects, getting natural resources, critical minerals out of the ground and build pipelines, which actually are very different from what the last Liberal government was focused on. But he's announced that he's having an investment summit to attract $1 trillion of foreign direct investment into these areas in the fall, supporting massive spend in defense industrial base and other major projects. It takes a long time to build a pipeline, so I'm not surprised that when you're out, there is nothing concrete, but I think that's coming. I've never seen the government or the public service be working quite this fast since COVID.
Okay, well, we continue to watch. Stevie, Jordan, thank you very much.